Vampires, cultists, and legendary loot are all things you're going to find in Redfall, a new RPG shooter from Arcane Studios, the folks behind Dishonored, Prey, and Deathloop. This game shifts gears a little bit from those others and flirts with the looter-shooter genre by giving players a band of unlikely heroes to choose from, lots of loot to collect, and skill trees to unlock in order to build the ultimate vampire-slaying machine. Before we get into what the game offers, I want to talk about my biggest complaint with the game. Redfall doesn't know what it wants to be. Does it want to be a looter shooter where it goes in the vein of a Borderlands or even a looter shooter light like Destiny? Or does it want to be a narrative driven experience like previous games that Arcane Studios has put out? And truly, it doesn't know what it wants to be. It takes some of the concepts of a looter shooter and tries to mesh them with the narrative driven experience, and ultimately it does not come out looking as well as they want it. It's like a cake that doesn't have enough yeast, it doesn't rise to the occasion, and instead you get a pan of mush. With that being said, there are some things that I did enjoy about Redfall, the overall world exploration, being able to learn a little bit more about the story of vampires, and the characters themselves that you get to choose from are pretty interesting. So with all of that, let's go ahead and dive into what Redfall offers, as well as some of the other complaints that I have about the game. Most of my time has been with a single hero, which I'll get to in a minute, so this review will come from the perspective of Devinder, the cryptid hunter turned vampire slayer. So let's go ahead, let's start there. Let's start with the heroes or the classes you're going to choose from. When you first begin Redfall, you're going to choose between 4 options. You have Jacob, the former military sniper who has a pet raven and can summon a ghost rifle. You have Layla, the telekinetic student who can create things with her mind, including like a Mirror Force style umbrella that reflects attacks. You have Devinder, the cryptid hunter who can cobble together gadgets that are built to shock and petrify enemies. And then you have Remy, the medic who knows her way around C4 explosives and healing auras. Now, once you pick your hero, you can choose a difficulty ranging from easy to hard. Then once you beat the campaign, you can head back and unlock the extra hard difficulty if you would like. Now, after all that, you're going to be thrust into the hostile world of Redfall. I'm not going to head into any spoiler territory here, so we'll keep things pretty high level when talking world and story. That way we can leave some surprises for you to discover. Redfall centers around a sleepy town that's been suddenly taken over by vampires. No one knows where they came from or why they're here, but you do know that they are hellbent on wiping out humanity. There are multiple story threads that go on during the campaign that connect you with lots of different characters and motives. Now, when it comes to the world, the map size of Redfall is pretty large, and it does give players lots of nooks and crannies to explore. It's split into a handful of different zones that have fast travel points to help move around the game a little bit easier. Now, at a certain point in the campaign, you will unlock another map to explore as well. So what you see when you first begin isn't what you stick with the entire time. Each zone has their safe house to discover and unlock, and once you discover one, you'll complete side missions in order to, quote, take back the neighborhood. And as you complete those side missions, new vendors will appear in the safe house and offer things to purchase. Once you complete all of the side missions, you'll need to take on the underboss of that zone, which is an elite vampire that has special affixes. Once defeated, they'll drop their skull and usually some decent loot. Now, these skulls are used to challenge the vampire gods or unlock hidden treasure within the world of Redfall. So it's important to complete these safe houses, collect as many skulls as you possibly can because they're going to be super, super useful. Now, throughout the world, there will be tons and tons of items to collect, and I'm talking tons of items to collect. Toilet paper, bleach, wrenches, everything in between. And when you collect these things, you're going to earn currency, which can be used to purchase weapons, ammo, lockpicks, and more. Now, one of the bummers that I ran into is that you won't be able to enter every single house. You'll be able to enter some houses while others are boarded up and they just serve as backdrop, basically, to fill in the void a little bit. Okay, so let's talk about what you're actually going to be doing out in the world. We talked about houses, we talked about picking things up and safe houses, but let's talk about what you're going to be doing, and that's exterminating vampires and building your character. So early on, vampires are pretty powerful and they're dangerous to take on. They're fast, they deal large amounts of damage, they can take a beating, but after you get a skill or two and you find some decent weapons, they quickly lose their edge and become more of a pushover. Now, the game sort of recognizes this and starts grouping them up and adding modifiers to sort of crank up the challenge, which helps keep things somewhat interesting. But unfortunately, all of this is undercut by the very poor enemy AI. Enemies don't react as their comrades are slowly getting picked off, and it just leads to a poor experience where there really isn't any sort of excitement when it comes to combat. And the other thing that really kind of plays negatively into the combat is the fact that your character doesn't have any sort of movement ability outside of jump and run. You don't have a dodge, you don't have a block, you don't have anything like that. So when you have these vampires that sort of rush at you so quickly, or they teleport behind you and they swipe at you, all you can do is jump or move to the side, and that's about it. So I would have really liked to see a little bit more kind of mechanics there, whether it was dodging, blocking, countering, parrying, something to give you a little bit more complexity in your character movement. So with all that, let's talk about what type of damage you can do as the character. So weapons in combat in Redfall revolves around mixing skills with gun combat with a little bit of melee mixed in when absolutely necessary. But from what I've seen, this is not a game where you can build around melee and make that your primary source of damage. Skills and guns are definitely the way to go. So skills are these cooldown based abilities. They're pretty powerful, especially on a character like Defender. With them, I was able to quickly deal with groups of vampires or cultists or humans. I was able to get out of lots of sticky situations by just casting a skill, using one of the abilities that I had. And as you level up, you're going to unlock even more skills, including an ultimate skill that'll require something called spirit energy to use. Basically, think of this like a super in Destiny. You have to collect orbs of light in order to use it. Same goes in Redfall. As you slay enemies, they're going to drop these spirit energy balls, you pick them up, and then that's going to refill your ultimate skill. Now you're also going to gain a skill point when you level up, which can be used to unlock nodes on the skill tree for each hero. Now these skill trees will enhance one of the skills you have access to, or can be used on miscellaneous nodes, things like increasing ammo capacity, health regeneration, or getting more currency from scrapping gear. Okay, so let's get back to the guns. So Redfall is sort of a looter shooter light. It doesn't have a massive variety like Borderlands, but it's closer to like Destiny in frequency of drops. You're going to see some weapons that drop from enemies in lootable containers, but it's typically like one or two at a time. Don't expect any loot fountains is what I'm trying to get at. This is not a full-on looter shooter like Borderlands. And the loot in Redfall is pretty middle of the road. So you have common, uncommon, rare, epic, and legendary. And of course, they rename them to different wording, like unrivaled is legendary, for instance. But ultimately they follow the same spectrum. Now, as you climb the rarities, the weapons will come with more affixes, and those affixes will also have more potent effects. So chasing legendaries is still the idea. But those legendaries, from what I've seen, don't have any cool effects. This was a big bummer. It was something that really kind of pulled me out of it. I only found a few legendaries that actually did something unique, and it was great when I found them, but most of the legendaries I came across were just percentage boost to headshot. A few extra rounds in your magazine, lessening the movement penalty when aiming. And that just wasn't exciting. And that was the sad part, is you found this legendary piece of gear and you're like, wow, this looks really cool. And the weapon itself looks really cool, but it doesn't do anything that really kind of makes you change your gameplay. It's just, oh, well, it's dealing more damage. That's good, I guess. And as someone who is a loot-focused gamer, it was an absolute letdown. So don't go into Redfall expecting legendary weapons to blow you away. Now, besides guns, you can also equip remnants, which basically are trinkets that grant some cool passive effects, protections, increases to your health. This is something you really want to make sure you're upgrading in order to survive stronger attacks, especially from vampires. But honestly, to my surprise, there isn't any sort of gearing system for your character. For me, this seems like it was a big missed opportunity to take advantage of some of the really cool stuff they've built into the world. I mean, this is a world where there's vampires, there's magic, there's all of these different things happening. It would have been really cool to be able to equip different sets of armor that were themed to the different factions within the game. But instead, you are stuck with what your character looks like outside of outfits that you can unlock, which are purely cosmetic. And these are things that you can find out in the world by either completing missions or discovering them as hidden collectibles. But outside of that, there really isn't any other way to upgrade your character. You have a couple remnants, you have a couple weapons, and you have your skill tree, and that's about it. So you might be asking, Vulkan, that all sounds great. How do we actually farm this loot? Does it just drop out in the world? Where can we find it? What's a reliable place? And I'm glad you asked. So one of the best places is vampire nests. Now, these are pockets of reality that have very high concentrations of vampires that are protecting a giant heart. Now, once inside, these things are extremely linear. They are not large maps. You basically have one path that you follow along until you make your way to the heart. Once you get to the heart, you want to clear out any vampires that are guarding it. And then once you do, you have to sever the tethers and then destroy it. When you destroy the heart, it'll drop a remnant. You pick that remnant up, and once you do, the nest begins to collapse, and you have 60 seconds to escape. Now, during this time, you can also break into side rooms and collect loot before exiting. So the idea here is that you want to balance collecting as much loot as you can while still being able to escape. Now, if you run out of time, you don't lose any items, right? If it collapses in on you, you die, you don't lose any items, but you don't get a large XP bonus that comes with escaping in time. So if you're someone who's really trying to push those levels and get skill points and all of that stuff, being able to escape gives you a big chunk of experience, and you want to make sure you do that. Now, in my experience, I didn't have any issues. I usually broke into all of the rooms, I got everything, I had like 10, 15 seconds left, and I was able to escape relatively comfortably. I haven't ran into any situations that made me choose between escaping and missing out on loot. So guys, that's really my experience with Redfall in a nutshell. Overall, my entire kind of playthrough, my time with the game has been just okay. It's not a shooter that's innovative, it's not genre defining, it's not going to win any awards, but I really enjoyed exploring the world, learning the story of Redfall, and kind of theory crafting new builds for each hero to see what neat synergies I could discover. If you're interested in trying out Redfall, there are links in the description for the Steam page and all of that fun stuff. Again, guys, I want to hear from you. So in the comment section below, what do you think about Redfall? Does this look interesting? Is this going to be something you're going to try out? And if so, which hero looks most interesting to you? Again, thank you so much for watching. This has been Vulkan, and I'll talk to you guys next time.